Nurottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayodyan. Nashna Presho Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashuki Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Nikamal Kapaturu Galitam Param Shukamakaram Mita Dravisamitam Pibita
Nityam
Bhagavatam
Bhagavata
Rasa
Sevaya
Bhagaram
Bhagavata.
Hora Hora Shikabuvi Bakaham. Krishna Swadamapagate Dhamagini Saha Karunashta Dushamasha Paranako. Do know ditaham Twamapia Dabashuta Vishutam Vibu Samyapirena Vidamvirexam Prakyahidova Manu Sanklesha Navana Masanti Nanyataham. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sarito Pango Mama Mene Matergati Matsavasha Padambo Radha Madana Mohano Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vamsi Veda Karsan Vinashana Pigo Gopinata Sri Saram Divya Brindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Radhagara Shima Shanisto Shri Sri Radha Shira Govinda Presti Lavihi Seva Manush Manami Namo Brahmanya Dabaya Go Brahmanya Taya Cha Jagati Taya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaham Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Padaya Jashami Tanam Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pachadine Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Paskita Desatani Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Rob. I can understand how after being so inconsistent having all of the Utah festivals, flying out to Miami and Canada, Texas, we've kind of lost our momentum here. But I'm glad that you're steady and consistent. Even all the Mondays we opted out, I noticed that you had applied to enter to be accepted. So on your merits, we forge on here. And I'm not really concerned. I love the opportunity to articulate the philosophy. Anytime that anyone speaks, it may very well be that the reason they're speaking is for their own purification, their own edification, and the benefits to the audience are perhaps not primary, but rather secondary, which is all good. Prabhupada said, actually, Bhaktisiddhanta told Prabhupada that if you go and preach in the Western countries, that will do good to you and that will do good to others. But we're all selfish, we're all self-interested. The problem is not our self-interest, but it's the problem is we don't know where our best interest lies. That's the problem. Examples given that if you're going to look for water, go to the jungles, go to where there's greenery and forestation. Look, there's nothing wrong with looking for water. The problem becomes when you look in the wrong place. You don't look for the water in the desert. You look for the water where there's rainfall, where there's greenery, where there's mountains, where there's lots of clouds. You'll find water there. You won't find water amongst the sand and the sun and the cactus and the rocks and the Gila monsters and the rattlesnakes. You're simply wasting your time. If you do think you see water in the desert, it's more likely a chimera, a phantasmagoria, a mirage. Many animals perish because they think they see water in the desert and they're already suffering from thirst and weakness and disorientation and vertigo. So in all of that, they start running towards this vision of water and use up the last vestiges of their energy and strength and become even more disoriented, more weakened, and they perish out there in the middle of the sand while they're pursuing water. And the problem has been from the very beginning not to go this way or in that direction or that direction. Problem is you're just in the wrong place. There isn't any water in the desert. You have to go to where there's water. So in this material world is sometimes compared to a desert. It's made of matter, which is dark and dry, unaccommodating. It's not full of juice. It's temporary. It's full of ignorance and permeated with misery. And so who in their right mind would search in this material world, this dark, temporary, miserable material world for happiness. You may get some temporary relief from suffering, but there's a difference between happiness and relief from suffering. I think you'll agree with me. Happiness is defined in the Bhagavad Gita as that which is ongoing and eternal and ever increasing. Relief from suffering just gives you a break, a respite from the fires, the burning fires of this material world. For instance, we have air conditioning. It's nice to be in an air-conditioned house. It's nice to be in a house with central heating. But that doesn't change the fact that the nature, that outside it's 100 degrees. Now they're predicting a heat wave for the Midwestern states, things to be over 100, people to die from the relentless heat. So your air conditioning, your central heating may give you temporary relief from suffering, but it's not pleasure, because the overall condition is that it's hot outside. It's unnaturally, unbearably hot outside, or in the winter, it's unnaturally, unbearably cold outside. So pretty much our position here is to tolerate the miseries. This material world is not a place to carve a niche of lasting, permanent happiness. It's just a place where we tolerate the miseries, and if our priorities are right, we work on our character, we execute our practices of Krishna consciousness, and then at the end of this life, we go back home, back to Godhead. Nobody in their right mind would try to think of making a permanent niche for happiness in this temporary, miserable material world full of suffering. So be alert, be discriminatory, and know the difference between the relief from suffering and positive happiness. Bobby says, need Facebook alerts that your programs have started again. Thank you. Let me take this opportunity to recite once again, and the more I recite it, the more I'll learn it myself. The second Gajendra poem. Some months ago, we composed a poem about Gajendra, Gajendra, king of elephants, sporting the heavenly planets, courting his wives on lotus-filled lake. Cavorting in the water, he'd snorted some honey with his trunk and was quite drunk. The crocodile latched onto his leg with his jaw, though he stampled, trampled, and stampeded, he couldn't get the croc to withdraw. That was the first poem, which more or less reviewed the plot, the action, adventure. This is more internal. We've shifted now from laying out the context of the story, the background of the story, telling the story. We've shifted now, and we're in that part of the 8th canto, 3rd chapter, which is dedicated to the 28 prayers that Gajendra uttered to the Lord while offering the lotus flower. And we're only on the 4th of those prayers, the 4th of those 28 prayers. But the other day I thought we need another song that's more oriented around the prayer. So here's what we have so far, with your permission. Gajendra, elephant king, in dangerous grip, his mind stripped of arrogance, his history unzipped, recalled mantras from a past life, cut away his attachments like a knife. Formerly king in Nrdumna, now in elephant form. Yet the prayers echoed, weathering the storms, mantras resurfacing from the past, transcendental sound awakening memories profound. And this particular verse. This is the 4th verse here. Krishna is the cause and result, the witness supreme, transcendental to this dream, unseen behind the material screen, the life of the machine. May he give us protection, the Lord of all might, guide us through darkness into the eternal light. He's the observer, the chainless preserver, above creation, aloof like the sun, yet with his energies he blesses everyone, simultaneously apart from this world and one. With multi-potencies he manifests his will, creating this universe, his purpose to fulfill, and when it's time to end, he absorbs it all back, like a spider retracting its web into its sack. Even if a devotee falls from the path, Krishna, the heart, keeps track. At the right time, he takes up the slack, carries what we lack. He'll get us back home, back to Godhead. Chant Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra's call, in this life or the next, it will never fail. Once the seed is sown, the Bhakti Kripa will grow. Sooner or later, you will go back home. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Well, we're joined by Bobby, as well as Natasha, and Rob's here on Zoom too. We're crawling back from having been in absentia for some period of time. So here's the some of the key words from this first verse. The Lord is addressed, Yah, Gajendra addresses that Lord. Shratmadidam, he describes the Lord as both the cause and the result of this cosmic manifestation. As we know, this world is cause and effect. Each and every one of us is the effect of a previous cause. We're the offspring of our parents. So we're the parents of the cause, we're the effect. Our parents themselves, simultaneously being our cause, they were the effect of their parents. Everyone follow me? Is that clear? And they in turn were the effect of their parents. So in this material world, in one sense, we are the cause and effect, but we're not both the cause and effect for everything. We're either the cause or we're the effect. We're either the cause of our children or we're the effect of our parents. But Krishna is described here as Shratmanidam, which means he is the first cause, the original singularity, the transcendental person from whom the whole material world emanates. There are his spiritual energies and his material energies, and everything in this phenomenal world is a combination or permutation of the material energies interacting with the spiritual energies. And so all of this emanates from the one source, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he is the cause of all causes, but he's also the result. He's not just the cause, he's the result. Imagine if your grandfather was imagine if you're the effect of your grandfather 2 generations removed, but imagine if you were also the cause of your grandfather. That would be quite a leap, wouldn't it? I mean, how can we even imagine ourselves as being the cause of our grandfather? He preceded us. Our grandfather, let's see, both of my grandfathers passed away. No, wait a minute. My one grandfather passed away when I was 2. My other grandfather passed away before I was born. Anyway, I had no real direct experience of either one of my grandfathers. And so how could I, in any way, shape, sense, or form, conceive of myself as the cause of my grandfathers? I am the effect of my grandfathers. They are my cause, 2 generations removed. You can't be both in this material world. You have to be either or. You pick a point and you're either an effect of that or you're the cause of that, but you're not cause and effect of the same phenomenon. That's not possible. We use that same example in connection with sound vibration. In the relative world, the name and the thing to which the name refers are different. It's not possible for them to be the same. Either it's the name, it's the sound vibration, or it's the physical manifestation. But they're not interchangeable. They're not one and the same because that's the definition of the relative world. However, on the absolute platform, any bona fide name of God, we pick Krishna after the ways of the great saints and sages, but there are other bona fide names of God which you could also chant to get the same result. The name of God and God are non-different because the name of God and God are absolute. There's no difference in the name and the Lord himself. So in the spiritual world, in the absolute sense, there's no difference in cause and effect. Krishna is both the cause of everything in this universe, and he is also the effect. Just like you might say the sun is the cause of the cloud, and the sun also is the cloud. The cloud rests on the sun. The sun is created from the sun. The cloud is created from the sun. The cloud is resting on the rays of the sun. Cloud is created when the sun beats down on the water, heats up the surface of the water, and then water is evaporated and rises and forms cloud. So the sun is both the sun itself, the cause of the cloud, and the cloud itself and the sun itself is the cloud in a sense because it's the expansion of the cloud separated energy. In the same way, Krishna is both the cause and he's the effect of this material creation. Departure evi dashantanam abhupete depayate vitu hetu shamanu yastadu gevicha vishnu govindamari purusham tamahang vijame. In his prayers to the Lord Brahma says that Krishna is like a flame. And when you have a flame, that candle can light 100 other candles, And every one of those subsequently lit candles then becomes as powerful as the original candle. So that original candle can be said to be the cause, but it's also the effect of all the other candles. And those effective candles become as powerful as the original candle. This is the prerogative of the absolute truth. He is both the cause of this cosmos, material creation, and he's also the result. Now, he's one with and different. So where's the difference? The difference is that this created material world is temporary. Here in this verse, it says, Kvachit, this cosmos, vibatam and teroitam. Vibatam means it's manifest, and teroitam means sometimes it's not manifest. Bhuta grama seva bhutpa bhupara ratamagur prabhavante aharagame. Krishna describes this material world in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as coming and going. Bhutpa, abhutpa, praliyate. Praliyate. Sometimes it's manifest and sometimes it's unmanifest. The example is given that within us is anger. All of us have anger within us. I think you'll agree. There's nobody that doesn't have anger within us. We used to have a really nice fellow come to the temple. His name was Gerald. He passed away a number of years ago. Very mild-mannered, sweet sort of a guy. Married his wife was Judith. He had several children. He worked at BYU Library, and he was a musician. He had a degree from BYU in music. He made money and his extra time as a piano tuner. He built harps in his home, which he sold. I believe one of those harps was donated back to us recently when a volunteer gave us a harp. Anyway, my experience of Gerald was that he was one of the most mild-mannered people that I've ever seen. But there was some sort of chemistry with him and his wife after having been married for a number of years and had children or something. And maybe it had to do with Gerald's gravitating towards the temple, or maybe not, I'm not sure. But apparently there were violent altercations, just violent altercation, which Judith would always accuse him of having an anger problem, an anger management problem. And I never saw that. But he would say to me, this is how my wife sees me, this is how my wife views me. It's interesting too, because we were talking in the Sunday feast talk yesterday or 2 days ago about valleys of depression, valleys of despair, valleys of divorce. They're inevitable in life. Every one of us comes to valleys. The valleys are necessary. The valleys are strategic. To go from one mountaintop to a higher mountaintop, you have to go through a valley in order to get there. And so rather than waste our time trying to wish away all the valleys of life, our time would be more productively spent working on our attitude in the valleys of life, attitude in the valleys of life. So I told the story of Prabhupada. Prabhupada was ordered by a spiritual master in 1926 to spread Krishna consciousness to the Western world. His spiritual master, who issued that order, Bhaktisiddhanta, said that will do good to you and that will do good to others. So Prabhupada made no secret. I mean, he was unable to extricate himself from the family at that time. He just had young children. He'd been married recently. He started a business. It was to be 48 years before he was actually able to leave the family and go to the Western world. In the meantime, he did his duties as a father, as a spouse, as a provider, but he would always go to the temple, wherever there was a local temple. His pharmacy was in Allahabad, and so he was one of the most generous donors there in sponsoring the opening of a mat in Allahabad. And he would go and often be asked to give the talk on Sundays. He was the de facto president there without being officially named the president. He was the de facto president. In fact, at one point, not in Allahabad, but later in Bombay, the other members of the mosque suggested to Bhaktisiddhanta that Prabhupada be the president because he was performing many of the duties of exercising leadership and acting as a president. And Bhaktisiddhanta, no, we don't want to tie him down here. In due course of time, he will do something much greater. So anyway, Prabhupada while performing his duties as a spouse and as a father and as a provider, he made no secret about the fact that his life's mission was to leave and go to America. But none of his family members took it very seriously. They thought this is he's hallucinatory. He's delusory to think that you could go to America all the way across the world where people are debauchees, womanizers, drunkards, meat eaters, old man. I mean, maybe if his spiritual master had caught him before he was married, before he raised a family, he could have gone as a young sannyasi or a young renunciate with his whole life ahead of him, 50 years, and all the vigor and energy of youth. But what can he do after he's, worked hard, daily grind, provided for his family, deal with all the issues, teens and preteens and post-teens, and his wife, who wasn't particularly religious. How in the world, in the autumnal years, would he ever have energy to go and start a mission? Like his family members are thinking, nobody does that. Nobody does that. If you're going to do it in your youth. Prabhupada told the story once of the old gray mare. The gray mare was out at the racetrack one day, looking over the fence, and all the young stallions, the thoroughbreds with the bloodlines and the registration and the papers, the lineage, the DNA were racing, being timed, and seemed like the trainers weren't happy with their times. They wanted faster times so that these horses would qualify for the big purses, the Preakness and the Kentucky Derby, so they would get their investment back and make some profit. So there were frowns of dissatisfaction on the faces of all the trainers as they clicked their stopwatches when the horses made their circle. And the old gray mare's looking at this and thinking about it and musing, and then thinks the old gray mare is thinking, let me try. Let me try. Those other horses could, well, let me try. So his family members behind his back must have been laughing at Prabhupada and ridiculing him for his thinking that after raising a family and in the retirement year, he could go to America amongst the youth of the counterculture, the rebellious youth who were questioning everything, and especially the elders, how he could imagine that this would be a course of action. They would just laugh and deride him behind his back. Like Don Quixote, I think of him as a Don Quixote, attacking windmills. And this all became apparent one time. Prabhupada, he wanted to tie things up. He wanted to cross the T's and dot the I's by getting his children married. I think he had 3 sons and 2 daughters. So at least one daughter she was saying, Dad, I don't want to get married. They would present this boy and that boy. She would say, no, 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 no. And this was dragging on and on, years and years and years. Prabhupada thought that he should do this last duty, getting all his children married, then we'd be free to go. But his children were not agreeing. It was dragging on and on and on and on. But finally, after they've been married for 36 years, Prabhupada was nearing 60 years old. And during his whole married life, he'd taken every opportunity to print books, to study the scripture, to translate and comment in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, to get all that printed in Delhi to raise funds. Prabhupada was very clearly prioritizing the missionary work. His family, to him, was subordinate. He wasn't delinquent. He wasn't irresponsible in terms of any of the family responsibilities, but his passion was the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he made no secrets of that. So imagine the potential for depression when Prabhupada came back after a trip to Delhi. He was gone for a few days, and he immediately looked for his Bhagavatams. He went to the bookshelf where his cherished sacred volumes of the Bhagavatams were, and there was emptiness. The shelf was vacant. Couldn't imagine. What happened? He went to his wife. He said, what happened to my Bhagavatams? And very flippantly and offhandedly, she said, oh, well, you were gone and there wasn't any petty cash and I ran out of tea biscuits, so I sold them for tea biscuits. Prophet said, what did you say? You sold the Bhagavatams for tea biscuits? It hit him like a thunderbolt. My family has, they don't, not only do they not understand the gravity of my mission, the seriousness with which my spiritual master gave that order 48 years ago, but they don't understand that this has been my life and soul. They think I'm an old fool. They think I'm delusional. They think I'm setting my goals too high, setting standards that could never be achieved. I'll never go to America. I'm just talking. I think I'll go to America, but I'm in a state of self-delusion. Now, imagine the potential for depression there. I remember a story that I ran across a number of years ago. It was really attention-getting. It talked about a man who was the president of the World Bank. I forget what his name was at the time. This is probably 10, 12 years ago. He was the president of the World Bank. You know, to be president of the World Bank means you've reached the top of your field. One of the most honored, lucrative professions in the world is to be a banker. And there are many bankers, and they're all graduates of prestigious colleges with cum laude and magna cum laude degrees. They're very good at what they do, and they're very passionate about it because, after all, it involves money, making money, preserving money, getting interest on money, investing money. So you have to be pretty much on the ball. Money is life. Money is the honey. So if you're managing your money and others' money, that's a position of great responsibility, and it assumes character. It assumes talent. It assumes ability. So here is a man. He's the president of the World Bank. That means in one of the top professions that exists on the planet, you know, law, I don't know, politics, finances, he is one of the most successful men in his field and one of the most successful men on the planet. And you would think that would be enough to keep him from depression, to keep him from low self-esteem, to keep him always pumped up. All he has to do is remember, hey, I'm the president of the World Bank. I have the approval and the accolades of all my colleagues. This little news story popped up. Said he and his wife had been on a vacation somewhere. They were in a luxury hotel. They were up on the 20th floor. And his wife said something demeaning to him. There were no details. But his wife of many years, the mother of sons, just cut him down, just said something completely cutting. And he allowed that to affect him so deeply. He allowed that to eclipse, counteract, and negate all of the obvious signs of approval, of success and expertise and maturity, to the point where he forced open the window. It was one of those windows which did not open because you know, if you're on the 20th floor of a motel, the motel doesn't want to be liable for people jumping out the windows. So they seal them. Well, some or other, in his wave of depression, in the aftermath of this totally insulting, demeaning, belittling expletive that his wife gave him, he became so diminished, so depressed, that some or other he forced open that window and jumped the president of the World Bank. You think, how can such a man be so vulnerable? And what has his wife done? She hasn't done. I mean, excuse me. I don't. This is not what I mean, but I mean in terms of professionalism, in terms of the accolades of his peers, in terms of the, she's done a great job. There's nothing second class about raising a family and being a mother and a wife and so on and so forth. But he's the one that's world famous. He's the one that has all the honors. He's the one that's the breadwinner. He's bringing in a six-figure income. And yet he allowed himself to be so affected by his wife, to whom he would look for support, that he committed suicide. So, Prabhupada's kind of, he could have been really, really depressed by this incident. Most men would. Even the category of man who's the president of the World Bank, as I just said. But because of his Krishna consciousness, this is one of the many, many great benefits of having a Krishna conscious background, of having trained under the direction of a spiritual master to put God first place, because a God-centered person is not so easily deprived of their self-esteem. We don't look to our wives, we don't look to our children, we don't look to our peers, we don't look to our colleagues for approval. We know we have the approval of Almighty God. If Krishna be for me, who be against me? Me and God are a majority. The devotees are never rocked. Their worlds are never rocked. Their foundations are never cracked. No matter what people say about them, or no matter what people do behind their backs, or no matter how people backstab, people will not always approve you. Many people will try to drag you down, discourage you. You have courage, you have dream, you have inspiration, but you make the mistake of sharing that dream with someone who's not your fan, someone whose life didn't become what they had hoped it would become, who've settled into mediocrity, and the first thing they're going to try to do is discourage you. Think about that word. You have courage, you have inspiration, you're prepared to step out in faith, but someone who's frustrated, angry, didn't accomplish what they had hoped to accomplish, didn't have the courage, nor the faith, nor the trust in God to get out of the boat, what do? They try to take your courage and diss you. They diss you. Who do you think you are? You're just average. You're not any better than anybody else. You can't do that. The mountain's too tall. You don't have the connections. You don't have the resources. You don't have the money. They take your courage and they diss it. They dish it. They try to discourage you. Misery loves company. I read somewhere there's balcony people and there's basement people. The balcony people, they realize that for them to help others to achieve success is a win for them. When any of us succeeds, all of us succeed. God is not a poor man. He has success, he has abundance, he has favors, enough to go around to everybody. It's not that if someone else is successful, then God will not have enough left over for me. Just the opposite. If I pour into someone else and I help them become successful, that's my win. God likes that. God approves that. God multiplies what you have when you reach back and give others a word of encouragement, or mentor them, or hook them up with somebody whom could help them exactly as they needed to be helped. There are various ways that you can encourage people, beginning just from an encouraging word, 2 seconds to lift them up, to comment on an ability that you notice that they may not be aware of, to the point of actually mentoring them yourself, taking time to tutor them and to answer their questions. Another way of helping people is to hook them up. You may not have the exact talents and skills which they need, but you know somebody. There's someone in your circle. And so you can introduce them to that other person. When you reach back to pull someone else up, that is a win for you. And that's how balcony people see the world. They're looking for opportunities. They're not so busy, they're not so absorbed in their own self-promotion that they don't notice that they're not on the lookout for others to whom they can lend a helping hand. Those are the balcony people. Now, you've probably figured out yourself by now who are the basement people. They're the people who did not fulfill their real potential. Maybe they had a passion, maybe they had a skill, but pursuing that passion, pursuing that skill wouldn't have given them the salary that some other career would have given them. So they sold out. They sold out their natural God-given attractions for money, for a paycheck, for a bigger house, for a bigger car. And in middle age, especially, they reached a crisis where they realized that inside they had failed to achieve fulfillment. And there's an angst, there's an anxiety. And they often resort to drugs or alcohol or binge watching of TV to deaden that disquiet deep within their hearts that you were made for something much greater than this. And so when they see that spark within someone younger, they see that enthusiasm. Instead of trying to encourage them, they discourage them, try to take the courage and pull that courage away from them by criticizing them, deflating them, passing demeaning comments. Misery loves company. So basement people try to keep everyone on the same mediocre level. They try to drag people down with them or to pull people down. They're full of envy and a competitive spirit. So Krishna is not part. From him, worlds manifest, and back into him, worlds become invisible and unmanifest. He sees everything. He witnesses everything. He remains apart from and aloof from both this manifested and non-manifested creation. It is to that transcendental Krishna, that Krishna who for himself needs no votes. He needs not the approval of anybody. Brahma, Shiva, the great demigods, they seek to take the dust from Krishna's feet. But Krishna does not depend upon the worship, the hallelujahs, the prostrations, the puja, even of big demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Krishna doesn't need that. And nevertheless, Krishna appreciates them by himself taking the dust from their feet. So that Krishna remains aloof, who doesn't need anyone's approval. It is to that Krishna that Gajendra is appealing. He's offering his prayers to that Krishna. And he's saying, Krishna, when you help others out, when you give them their protection, you do not do so in order to get something back for yourself. You're not canvassing for votes. You're not God because you've been elected God by a democratic process. You're God whether people recognize you're God or not, whether they worship you or whether they decry you, whether they try to serve you or whether they try to challenge you, whether they're Yudhisthira or whether they're Jarasandra. You're still God in all circumstances, no matter what the mass of people say. So if you're going to help me, I know that it's not because of anything to do with your getting return or getting my vote or getting my approbation or getting cheers from the peanut gallery. If you're going to help me, it's only going to be because I have some purity of heart, that I have the desire now, after having forgotten you for many thousands of years. Now, in this life and death situation, Krishna, you very kindly sent the crocodile to help me remember you. And now, Lord, I believe that the impurities of my heart have been removed. And I believe that my desire to serve you is genuine. And I do not believe that I will be distracted a second time. But you're in my heart, Lord. You have X-ray vision. So I want you to look in my heart. I want you to discern my motives. And if it is your conclusion that my motives are pure, then please come and save me from the crocodile. These are the gist of the prayers of Gajendra. And in all of that, Gajendra is also throwing this in there to indicate to the Lord the purity of his motives. Gajendra is saying, Nahamji Javashi Hamashikim. After you save me from the crocodile, I do not want to continue on in this elephant's body. This elephant's body is of limited use in serving you. So, Lord, even if you do save this elephant's body from the crocodile, I don't want to go back to being an elephant spouse, an elephant father, an elephant grandfather, to be king of the elephants. I don't want to get back into that situation. Just like Prabhupada, he didn't want to be any longer in the tea biscuit environment. Enough is enough. When that tea biscuit incident came, he realized it's time. Let my children take care of themselves. They want to get married, let them find their own mates. They don't want to get married. I tried my best. For years I tried, and they resisted. One of his daughters never ever did get married. So Prabhupada, time is up. I no longer have to lift another finger to get the approval of my family, my wife, my relatives, uh, my coworkers. At that point, he left his family, never to return. And even then, the family thought he'll be back. He'll be back. So thoroughly had they missed, so completely had they misunderstood him. They thought, oh, he's come and gone so many times. He's come and gone. He says he's going, and then he comes back. So this is just another phase. He'll be back. But Prabhupada knew he would never be back. He was cutting the thread. He'd overstayed. He'd overstayed, misapprehending that he could tie things up. Family life will never be tied up. It will never be tidy. It will never be complete. It is the definition of entanglement. When you get into family, you're like tar baby getting stuck into tar. Sooner or later, there's going to have to some dramatic, extreme incident to wake you up and to get you to get out of that situation. This is what happened with Prabhupada, with the tea incident. This is what happened with Gajendra when the crocodile latched onto his jaw. After the crocodile latched onto his jaw and threatened his life, Gajendra realized he didn't want to be saved as the elephant. He wanted to serve the Lord, and in that mood, he prayed to the Lord, give me some better. In the past life, I was a king. I was able to serve you with a lot of resources. Try to improve my situation. I'm not attached to this elephant's body. If it is your desire to switch out this elephant's body for something, some body which I can use as an instrument to serve you in a greater way, to have greater influence and bring more people to your lotus feet, then so be it. This was Gajendra's mature fruit of realization. Okay, that should be enough food for thought for today. Let's go over here. We had a few people jump on. Natasha Hari Krishna. Britta's been listening to our talks on YouTube, commenting. Certainly appreciate that, and sharing her own insights. Britta is quite an intellect. She's very educated. She's very intelligent. She's extremely intellectual, both her and her husband and her son. She's got very formidable intellect, and I can see that she's starting to appreciate Krishna consciousness even more and more. That's very gratifying to me. Anjali, the queen of comments, jumps on board with a Hare Krishna and Dhanyavad. Britta says, I think that goes to show that number one, should not base their life's worth on the opinion of everyone, God. Two, your choice of spouse is one of determining factors of support in our mission. You either support your partner's dharma or you're against it. It's very important. Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world whether you have someone who supports the mission or someone who opposes it. Unfortunately, Prabhupada got the order from the spiritual master after he was already married. So that was, chronologically, that was that couldn't have been a factor in determining who his wife had been, because that was a fait accompli. He just had to deal with it. He had to ride out some 40 plus years of maintaining his family and disinterest from his family side in the gravity and importance of his mission. But he did it. He went above and beyond, and finally, when it became the tea biscuit, he cut his ties, and he still had time. Krishna still extended his life long enough that he could plant the seeds of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. God is great. All right. Well, thanks to Britta, thanks to Vaibhavi, thanks to Natasha and Rob. We'd go to Robbie there, Rob, because we'd love to have you share any of your takeaways with us.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribo.
I was able to double down on yesterday. So today I've got 4.
Yesterday you had 2, today you have 4. Yippity dippity doo dah.
All right. Krishna is the effect and cause, the lawmaker and the laws.
Nice.
Even an old gray mare can perform with flair when under Krishna's care.
I love that one.
Turn to the Supreme to validate your self-esteem.
Excellent. Excellent. Right on the money.
And are you on the balcony or in the basement? Do you live with gratitude or resentment?
Every one of those is really good. You'll send them to me, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Good. I'll look forward to posting them. And I'll look forward to joining you all 23 hours from now for Wisdom Wednesday, the 3rd in our series of 3. And that will have been the 112. This was 111 episode. And tomorrow will be the 112th time that we've revisited the lotus feet of Gajendra and the Lord who saved him on the back of Garuda. So much limitless nectar. Look forward to revisiting these past times tomorrow, next Monday, next Tuesday, and so on and so forth. We might get 200 sessions out of that. What do you think? We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, have a great Krishna conscious day by punctuating your day with the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.